Alright, lesson 2, fundamental power steering. Describe the fundamental of the power steering system. Given the information about the principal operation, construction, and inspection power system, reference TN 98000 letters. Let's grab the event 1. Describe the construction and operation of the power steering system. Steering gears provide the mechanical advantage ratio of 11 to 1, 12 to 1. Light cars up to 18 to 1. Move with the heavy trucks. More mechanical advantage desired. Some of the vehicle the easier to steer, but it's not always practical there, though, because it requires a excessive amount of the turning as the steering to pivot the front wheels to reduce the amount of effort required to turn the wheels without increasing the amount of the steering is turned. Power steering is used. The term power steering is well known as the hydraulic power steering system, widely used in passenger cars. Hydraulic power systems consist of the double action power of the power pump reservoir valve with the connecting line of the fittings. Power systems reduce the effort required of the turn of the steering wheel, but the task is accomplished with the auxiliary power network incorporated in the steering system. Alright, typical power steering pump, the V-belt with the filler cap of the power steering pump and the pulley. Show the filler cap, oil reservoir, end plate springs, return tube, return ring, pressure union, cross in over tank, pressure plate, pump housing, drive shaft, drive seal, thrust plate, the rotor and vanes and flow control valve. Alright, this shows your down pin hole, pump rotor, pump ring, crossover hole, dowel pin hole, pump vanes, crossover hole. And that's your typical power steering pump. Or the pump. All power steering systems contain with the pump with the system supplied with a hydraulic fluid without pressure for the other components within the system. The pump, which made with the beam, the gear teeth of the rotor with the vane type, usually driven with the engine with the bolt with the function whenever the engine is operating. On the sub-mount with the pump that's mounted with the front of the engine driven directly by the crankshaft with the pressure flow relief valve also will be built into the pump with these valves to limit the amount of the pressure flow of the pump to level through the different engine speed. Reservoir of the pump receives the oil supply with the reservoir, which usually an integral part of the pump. The power steering fluid is added and checked at the reservoir. The fluid level should be kept at the 3/4 inch of the full at all time. If the reservoir full, there's no room for the thermal expansion. If the fluid level is low, condensation may form. This shows lesson learning event 2. The control valve show the return hoses for the pressure hose of the control valve, the pressure hose, the rear chamber, selector gear roll and ball rack and forward chamber, control valve cylinder, in-valve cylinder unit, and the spooled center booster unit stationary control valve supply, return rod anchor, and column type control valve. Your control valve is actuated with the steering wheel movements directed the hydraulic fluid or under the pressure for the proper location of the steering wheel. The system of the control valve may be mounted either in steering box or on the steering linkage depending on the system configuration. So that's your control valves. Figure 15, power steering gearbox, the adapter seal, piston, power cylinder, power rack, pitman shaft, and ball nut worm shaft. Piston shaft, section gear, fluid in. Rack piston pin, control valve, fluid in. Alright, gearbox and integral power of the system basically manual the gearbox data for the power system package for the integral power shift for the gearbox, the two type of the offset inline, offset type with the reciprocating ball gearbox with the recommended mesh, pitman sector gear with the bulb of the opposite side of the ball bone nut with the power of the steering force is developed with the power piston with its offset from worm and nut attached to the rack. The inline design with the recirculating ball nut assembly has power with the piston. The design ball nut with the shield inside of the cylindrical portion of the steering gearing. How the power and steering effect is produced by alternating pressure effort inside of the power piston. Hydraulic cylinder. The hydraulic cylinder used with the semi-integral with the integral power steering with the system is located with the steering linkage of the power system with the developed cylinder through the action pressurized hydraulic fluid. The cylinder made single with a double wall construction of the hydraulic hose near the ports end of each with a single wall cylinder. The double wall cylinder have the connection one end of the bolt the hoses end. Integral pathways between the walls to pressurize the other end of the cylinder. The thermal linkage cylinders have shuttle valves built into the piston with the valves open end of the piston stroke with this feature that helps eliminate full hydraulic pressure from acting on the cylinder when the piston is bottomed by opening and allowing the fluid to flow through the piston. Alright, operation, neutral. The neutral position, there is no force required for the power steering system to turn the wheels. Therefore, fluid under the pressure must meet with the bypass through the system usually accomplished for the control valve. There is no steering force required by the driver and spool with the control valve at the same by the spring and hydraulic pressure on both of this allows the oil to flow through the valve of the back into the reservoir, allow the steering system maintain position. Left and right turns. As the driver starts to turn the steering wheel to make a left or a right turn, the power steering system is activated. The spool is moved off the center of the position force to the left or the right with the control valve. This opens the proper passage of the pressurized oil with the return port. It's also open the fluid being displayed with the piston, and then the cylinder returns to the called reservoir. Configuration linkage type. The linkage configuration for the control valve power cylinder may be separate parts mounted on different parts of the linkage. Integral systems can incorporate the control valve power system into a steering gear as a unit. Semi-integral control valve semi-integral is mounted to steering gear, and separate hydraulic cylinders mounted to the linkage. Alright, your lesson 2, describe the inspection troubleshooting procedure for the power steering system and some system. Troubleshooting hydraulic pump cylinder motor valves of the precision units. Smooth operation depends on frequent inspection, proper servicing. Hydraulic system that must be kept clean, with the oil filters must be changed as recommended. Technical manuals and proper operation generally with the one traced in one of the following causes: liquid of the wrong kind, of the wrong viscosity, not in enough of the liquid in the system, air in the hydraulic unit, the line with the damage in warm ports, oil leakage, internal, external, dirt, water, sludge, rust, metal cuttings, other foreign matter into the system. Units control linkage and properly adjusted operator error. Troubleshooters usually use the procedure that will lead to directly to the cause of the trouble. Eliminate with the many guesses of the work as possible. One of the set of the procedures is called stop and describe as follows. Step of the hydraulic circuit diagram will know that each of the part system is supposed to do. This is probably the most vital part of the troubleshooting test. Usually all equipment means available. You must know the exact condition exists within the system, how it reacts before you can make an accurate decision. And organized knowledge gained with the circuit diagram study with the hydraulic system test, then determine the cause of the trouble. And B, perform repairs taking time to do the job well. So the troubleshooting section of the vehicle, the TMs contain a list of the trouble, the final function of the vehicle, hydraulic system, probable cause of the trouble, then the corrective repair of the jet should be made with always view this list as A with the troubleshooting of the vehicle. Inspection. Begin with the inspection, checking level, the condition of the steering oil, with looking over the evidence leak. With the inspect with the hydraulic pump, look for, especially for the signs of leak at the pump. Mounting gasket between the pump and discover the tighten the mounting of the covered bolts is necessary. Explain all hydraulic hoses carefully, especially with the high pressure for the hoses between the pump and the control valve, between the control valve with the power cylinder. The hose should be secure in the clamps of the not rubbing again for the other parts of the component, but unless there are evidence of leaks for the do not tighten any of the hose parting to check with the control valve, the evidence of the leak of the loose valve of the steering jacket of the mounting bolts. If no leaks of the evident system, you can now add the oil with the reservoir if the oil level was low in the check tape. But of course, if you find the old dirt and mix with the water of the drain old oil, refill it with clean oil while the oil is drained. Cleaning of the filter screen with the keep the oil level of the reservoir 3/4 inch full of the allow for expansion. Continue your inspection. Check with the steering gear itself with looking at evidence lubrication oil leaks around the gearing housing gasket and seals. Check the level of lubrication oil with the steering gear and housing of that. Remove the filler plug with the top of the housing. If necessary, fill with the housing with the proper grade of oil. The Go is much heavier. Go is much heavier than the OE used in the hydraulic system. This makes it easier to decide whether the hydraulic system and the steering gear is at fault if there is leak around the steering gear housing. Check with the steering gear to frame bracket mounting bolts with a wrench. Also check the steering column with the dash to pan with the bracket bolts for tightness. Alright, you're starting the engine. Check the hydraulic system for the leaks in the coil oil while oil pressure is applied. Remember the high pressure to develop within the system only with the turning after it's applied with the steering wheel, so that they have the body turned with the steering wheel while you look at the slightly oil leaks. Do not hold the steering against the steering stop for more than a few seconds at a time because of this containment. The hydraulic system relief valve will open to prevent the pressure from going in high enough to rupture the line within the units. However, the high pressure creates the heat which can damage the system. Road test the vehicle. Check the ending of the tendency for the wander. Weave back with the forward, then shimmy the check for the excessive replay binding for pulling of the right and left. The check the action with the steering assist from both of the right left turns. The steering after the required should be small. When you can turn the steering wheel with your thumb and the forefinger while the vehicle is moving, isolating faults. If the road test reveals any of the steering fault, the next step is to find the cause of the faults particularly with the power steering system of the 4-wide time of the truck will be described. If the steering was hard, but the binding with the term of the trouble could be from the power steering gear, the steering column, jacket, linkage of the steering knuckle with the pivot is the pinpoint with the trouble. You will need to disconnect with the steering linkage from the steering gear at the point of the upper drag link with the connect with the pitman arm. To disconnect with the drag link with the pitman arm, remove the outer pin, dust shield from the upper drag link end with unscrew with the drag link adjusting plug with as far as possible without removing it. Turn the steering wheel back and forth as loosen the ball seal seats of the pitman over the arm ball stud. Then lift the drag link with the pitman arm and the ball stud. The U of the jack reef with the front axle with the U and the end of the both front of the wheels are off the ground. Grasp one of the front wheel with the front of the rear of the pivot of these wheels back and forth over the steering knuckle. If the wheels are pivoted easily, the binding is not caused by steering knuckles or steering linkage. The binding of the may be caused with the steering column jacket being misaligned with the steering gear with the check with this for the loosening with the binding bracket cap screw with the clam bolt, securing with the steering column jacket with the instrument panel with the column is with the misaligned, and up to cause with the steering of the shaft is bind with the realigned itself with the cap screw with the clamp that are loose and tighten the binding of the screw with the clamp with the turn steering wheel to check for the binding of the steel binding with the trouble that is steering of the gear. If the problem is hard steering with no binding, that is caused with the hydraulic system. If the vehicle pulled with the right or left during the road test of this fault, the may be caused because unequal tire pressure of the dragging brakes on the 5-ton track. However, the pulling on the one side can also be caused with the hydraulic power steering. You check for this on the following manner. The drag linkage must be disconnected with the pitman arm. Make sure the steering gear is in mid position. Do this and turning with the steering wheel with the one direction as far as it will go. Then counting the number of the turn of the wheel with the opposite direction as far as it will go. Turn the wheel back in half. Of the number of turns do you count from the stop to stop. Now start with the engine. Operate with this fast level without touching the steering wheel while it watches to see if it moves by itself. If it does, the power steering control valve is not centered. It does not return to its neutral position. This can be caused by loose control valve mounting bolts, loose cam cover bolts at the ends of the cam, and to tighten these bolts do not correct the problem. This cover the defective control valve. The valve is not adjusted properly. After the cover the trouble that have been corrected, you must reconnect with the drag link of the pitman arm. We're connecting the drag link with make sure the ball is the properly positioned between the ball with the C. If the tighten the drag link adjusting plugs until the bottom of them back off the adjusting plug until there is a slot aligned with the fish cotter pin and hole. Install the dust shield with a new cotter pin and lubricate the drag link. Alright, if the repairs are beyond the unit level, the maintenance notify your maintenance sergeant so that you can arrange for the truck to be repaired with the support unit. To isolate the fault with the hydraulic system repair with the support of the unit will probably be unit pressurized. Pressure test gauge set with a design for these tasks. In case you get to assist on the job, here's how it's done. High pressure line between the pump and the control valve. The disconnected the control valve. The T-fitting is installed with the control valve where line has been removed. The high pressure line is connected to the T-fitting. It is the center of the T. Connect the pressure gauge using a short hose provided in the test kit. The hydraulic system can now be operated with the pressure developed that will be shown in the pressure gauge. Before making any pressure tests, the fill reservoir to the proper level of the OE10. Operate the engine with a hydraulic oil at the normal operating temperature of the rapid pressure for the building up the curve of the engine. And start to turn the engine off quickly. Look up the plug lines and fittings. Oil passage before going any further. Plug partially plug passage can be pressure build up that will burst lines and castings. After the unit has been reached the normal operating temperature, turn the steering wheel with the right turn with the engine running at 1,000 RPMs. Continue with the turning steer until the right turn stop is reached. Then hold the tight against the stop with just a few seconds. This gauge should read some 750 psi for trucks with gasoline engines between the 850 to 1,000 psi for the multi-fuel diesel engines. To repeat this test, left turn with the proper position. It may be necessary to have the assistance hold the place iron 1/4 inch thick before in front of the axle left turn stop. The hydraulic power piston is allowed to travel to the end of the cylinder left turn, but then it uncovers the port that allows the pressure to escape. That 1/4 inch piece of iron prevents this piston from traveling far enough to uncover the port. Alright, if the pressure is too low, another test is necessary to tell which of the unit with the fault of the relief valve of the pump of the separate assembly. This is done by blocking the oil flow with the relief valve that do not let the pressure build up above 750 psi. When you make the pressure test with the relief valve of the block of the test raised with the pressure of the relief valve is defective. If the pressure is still low, the pump is probably defective. If replacing the pump does not raise with the pressure, the trouble is internal leakage of the control valve of the power cylinder. If the pressure was too high with the relief valve connected with properly within the system, the relief valve is faulty on the trucks with gas engines. The relief valve is replaced separately, but the entire pump must be replaced on the trucks with multi-fuel Mack diesel engines. And that was lesson 2. And that is the rest of the book of Subcourse OD 107. This is edition A of U.S. Army Ordnance Center Control Wheel Vehicle Steering Systems.